Thanks, Godfrey. The mid-year budget is out, and here to tell us all about it is Mr. Gowon, Bowe, CEO at Fidelity Bank. Good morning and welcome back to Bahamas at Sunrise.
It's not been that long. So.
I know. It's always great to have you on. We get so much information from you. Just tell us, overview the mid-year budget. What are your concerns? Tell us all about it.
Well, I think the reality is we have to appreciate that it is a report card for the half year, so it isn't the full year, and I think that should be recognized. However, if you are 6 months in, you have a very good understanding of where you are, and unfortunately we are in a deficit that is significantly higher than was projected for the full year. I think we have to be careful when I speak into the political parties about politicizing this and really speak to governance. And the reason why I say that is, yes, we may have had a noble ambition of a low deficit of 70 million, but we equally owe a duty of care to the persons to say we may not hit that. And that is not necessarily a bad thing. It's just that we need to be very transparent, but more importantly, holistic and comprehensive. Because when you hold to a political line, and that goes for the opposition as well, because I don't know any fisherman that calls his fish stink. So when they are criticizing the finances of the country, they have to appreciate that they're not criticizing the government per se, or the political party that is their opponent. They're criticizing the government, which they hope to lead. And so I think both political parties need to temper the political buffoonery, is the way I would consider it, and let's start talking about the numbers, which do have some areas of concern that we'll chat on.
Okay, so given the projected real GDP growth of 1.9% in 2024 and the IMF's estimate of flat growth in 2025 of 1.7%, what are the drivers or the key drivers and influence that that these growth and trends may have in the Bahamian economy?
Well, the reality is there's been a report that said for our unemployment numbers to sustainably remain low, we need growth in terms of nominal terms of near 5%. So we're significantly off of that. The positive news is we are growing, and so that means that we're not moving backwards, and if we're moving forward just at a slower pace, we have to, if you will, cut our suit to fit the cloth. Because if the economy is not growing at the pace that you would like it to, it means that you can't spend at the pace that you would like to, because the intake is going to be slower. I believe when we look at the industries like tourism, financial services, we are not maximizing them because we are absent a national development plan. We are not looking forward 25, 30 years. In tourism, we know it's changed. Airbnb is a lot more popular because people want more secluded environments, not necessarily resorts, which is key for our family islands. Who has more of that landmass than we do in the country? Right. Ecotourism, sports tourism, religious tourism, conference tourism, which has fallen off, that we need to bring back. Financial services, the world has changed in that. When it doesn't mean we don't have a niche to play, it just means that we have to be more deliberate in what we do.
Okay, and then the Bahamas has seen significant growth in tourism, particularly cruise ship arrivals, right? So how do you view the long-term sustainable growth of this, and what are some of the risks of the cruise ships
in my
coming
view,
over?
any tourist coming to the country is positive news because it's more about how we access their wallet. So there's criticism around the tourism numbers by virtue of it all being cruise passengers, and to be honest, yes, we want the stopover, but it's because we're not extrapolating necessarily what we can from the cruise passengers. A statistic that they don't speak about is 50% of them don't come off of the cruise ship.
Right.
And then the other part is that when they come off of the cruise ship, if we don't get Bahamians in the mindset of digital payments, they come off with very little cash. So you're talking about trinket spending. So if we get bars, restaurants, cafes, we get sites, we get activities, etc., where we're bringing off 75, 80% of the tourists, taking their spend up to an actual overall day spend, then we could get greater value for it. But we have to negotiate smarter with the cruise industry because, to be fair, it's an oligopsony. They believe that the power they have dictates or allows them to dictate what they pay us as a country, and they need us more than we need them. We just have to trust that.
Yeah, and I think more authentic Bahamian experiences
Precisely.
as well, right, when they come over. So despite a reduction in the VAT rate from 12% to 10%, you've got the VAT revenue collections that have increased, but how do you feel, or how do you interpret this, and what does it suggest about the broader economic conditions of the
Well, I was a
Bahamas?
part of the original implementation of VAT, and to be honest, I was very critical of the move to 12% and the addition of exemptions. So it's not really some miracle that the revenue hasn't fallen off, because the actual exemptions have been removed. So the rate being reduced and the exemptions being removed. Again, I hear what I consider to be the uninformed and ignorant views that we should have these exemptions. But the truth is, those who can afford to pay should pay, and we need to have the redirection of the funds. So as it relates to the performance, I don't think it's shall we say, so superb. It should have been expected, because as the economy refloats and it becomes more buoyant again, tax on that is going to be higher. And so saying that this is the highest revenue we've collected is not a big thing, because it's the highest GDP we've ever had as a country. So let's put it into perspective. But we haven't seen the introduction of the RISE program, which is the redirection of some of that excess revenue being collected from those who can pay to redirect it to those who cannot. And the move on the food to reduce to 5%, I think, good effort, but I would have much rather preferred that they kept the 10% and redirected the funds to those who need it, as opposed to giving the break to everyone, and some of us don't need it.
I understand that. Okay, so the increase in public debt to 11.7 billion is a significant concern, obviously. How do you assess the government's management of debt, and what would be the long-term implications if this debt continues to rise?
Well, this is only a Bahamas at Sunrise show. That'll take forever in terms of how I assess it. I'll suffice to say that I think our debt management needs significant improvement and enhancement. I think the main message is we keep talking about there being a reduction in debt. I know very basically reduction in debt means that the debt value is decreasing. What we keep talking about in government, both administrations, is what the debt to GDP is. And if we look at GDP, GDP can grow, and that means that the debt as a percentage is less. But if we're not paying it back, let's be very real. Another pandemic, a recession, or anything that impacts GDP then takes that number to a significant one. So let's stop talking in relative terms and let's talk in absolute terms. And the country has never run a surplus since independence. So for the past 52 years, we've not run a surplus. So that means our debt has never been decreased for 52 years. And let's stop talking things that are, what I'm going to say, esoteric, and let's talk real numbers, because you know when you borrow from the bank, the only way you get out of debt is when you pay it back.
Right.
Simple.
So when we talk about, like, I guess the government, has changed in the United States. There's some tariffs there. What are some of your concerns that you have there?
We have to remember that we are a taker, and so that means we have to be very observant of what is taking place. We're not going to dictate what is happening. We're not even going to influence it. The reality is we are simply going to have to absorb it. But success is where opportunity meets preparation. So the reality is volatility and uncertainty is not a bad thing if you're on the right side of the equation. And so it means that National Development Plan is even more important, because we need to know where we're going, so that when things change, we have turbulence, we have things that throw us off path, we know how to get back to center. And in the absence of that, we're just actually wandering along, and we have to be careful about that.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's been a pleasure having you on.
Always
so informative. I feel like we could be here for another hour, right? There's so much to talk about, but thank you so much for your time.
Always a pleasure.
Ladies and gentlemen, you've been watching Bahamas at Sunrise. We'll be right back.